welcome back, Dom.
Hi, Dan.
You know what? Another season. It's 2023. This is the first year and episode of NAS Café. And how are things going?
It's going to be a busy year. It's actually ramping up great. I would say, feels like the pandemic has slowed down enough that everybody's comfortable getting back to work and really opening up to life and being around people again, which is great.
I noticed the ride in. There's a lot more cars now than there was. It's sort of like back to normal almost.
Yeah, exactly.
There's still a fair amount of people doing the work from home or the mixed shifts or anything like that. But it's been a little bit of time. I was actually in the hospital. I had torn my Achilles.
Poor guy.
Yeah, playing hockey of all things. I wish I could say it was something a little bit more exciting. But anyways, I'm in the boot here now for the next, it's going to be a while. 12 weeks total, I think, minimum. So it's a long time. But anyways, we're a little bit delayed in our schedule of getting these videos out, but that's why. So anyways, we're glad to be back and excited to talk to you guys a little bit more about ransomware. So, the message of the day is be prepared to fight or be prepared to pay.
That's right.
So Dom, why should you care?
Well, some of us have probably talked about ransomware or heard about ransomware a whole lot over the last several years. But you know what? It still needs to be brought up. It's only becoming more and more sophisticated, and ransomware is maybe one of the most serious threats that are on the IT landscape for most, if not all, businesses. So, for example, what ransomware is to start, many of us may already know, but we know as technical people, but basically any type of file that can get into a computer, it has an auto-executable code that then encrypts a PC or a server's file system. And what that means basically is the files essentially begin to disappear within seconds or minutes, depending on how new or fast your computers are. That can actually work against you, right? So traditionally or typically, it's within a few minutes only. And that is a very intelligent and sophisticated piece of software that knows how to connect into servers, utilize VPNs, and all sorts of stuff like that to spread itself across the network and essentially hold a business ransom. When the data is encrypted, it becomes essentially invisible, but it makes all the applications typically stop working, because if the program, the CRM, the email program can't access the data, it crashes. And now nobody can do anything, and we're literally stuck in the water being held ransom. So very scary.
You know what? I was recently reading that's been updating, but 40% of email, some experts are saying, contains some ransomware payload or solicitation, phishing.
That's right.
All the different topics that we have. So it's a significant amount of volume that's coming into an organization, and it doesn't matter how big you are. Like if you're 5 people or 100 people. Like if you think about all the attack vectors coming in that you've got to protect yourself from, we were talking about this in the previous episode, the human firewall.
Yeah.
Are you a human firewall? That's because you've really got to educate everybody in your company about it, because it's a big risk.
That's right.
There's so many things coming in today. So who is susceptible? I guess is there only one particular industry? Is it all industries? Is it residential? Is it business? Who's susceptible?
No, it's probably absolutely everyone, right? Like we hear of witnesses and evidence from, you might have a story about one of your own family members, right? From little old ma and pa, getting asked to buy gift cards for people and making it urgent and playing on all their buttons there, to people having it on a smishing campaign on a cell phone. I accidentally hit the link on a text that I wasn't aware of, to the email, like you said. I want to say probably in business, still the number one email that people are going to get is when they're actually soliciting for people to get hired for a position. In those documents, in those responses, it can be doctored and be very threatening. So it's not fair to say that there's an industry that's not susceptible unless they're not using technology.
Yeah, I guess on two fronts, I got a call from a family member. Dan, I'm at the grocery store, and I just don't feel right about this, but my friend so-and-so has called me saying, I'm in a jam and I need a gift card. Could you pick one up for me? And it was, the email had another, like a one instead of an I in the name.
Right.
at gmail.com, you know, so it was so close. And I said, well, did you check and confirm? Like, so the first thing you need to do is call, right? But anyways, that was a family member just, acting out of the kindness of their heart, they think, but they're giving the money away to the wrong person.
That's right.
Yeah, and then the other extreme is another grocery. But recently a major grocery manufacturer or a distributor here in Canada, an executive opened an email that came in and infected their corporate servers, and it trickled down to the point where they couldn't actually buy produce, and they had empty shelves. But they had the net result of that cost was $25 million in lost productivity, lost sales. So everybody's susceptible.
That's right.
And the impact's big. So like I said, be prepared to fight or be prepared to pay, right? So how do we fight, Dom? Like we've got maybe 5 step suggestions here today that we'll go through. But maybe number 1 is protecting yourself. So how do you protect yourself?
Well, like any good IT person will tell you, backups are everything, right? And not just having a copy, but testing that copy. Making sure that your backup information is actually restorable in a functional fashion, right? So outside of ransomware, like heaven forbid, any type of backup needs to be used. There's a very high number, I'm going to say at least 50% of backups that simply do not restore well because they were never tested. So
some backups are even susceptible to being encrypted.
yes.
So you can't even get the backups.
That's exactly it. So
Right.
that's maybe the most sinister component of some of these really sophisticated cyber threats is that if they can get into the network, they sleep and they don't do anything for 3 months or 6 months with the intention to get into the backup rotation and then activate so that us as IT professionals, we look to restore the data from maybe last month, last week, etc., and find out, oh, we got it all restored after we work, say an hour, couple days to get everything's back to working condition, and then it's instantly ransomed again because the program is just able to relaunch itself out of it.
It was actually caught in the backup, yeah. Companies exist out there that will help pretty much any organization, but just be aware of the organization's, we'll call them obligations, like what they do. So if they're promoting that they actually test the backup, make sure that they do actually test it. But you can get support from an organization that does, sometimes they call themselves MSPs, sometimes just IT specialists, but where they will actually go through a routine and make sure that your backup is sound.
Yep.
That there is alerting or something like that that's in place that they can respond to. But also just they will report back that, hey, we tested your backup and it was successful. Or, every day they're getting the backup reporting that's coming in.
Yep.
That's something that's really critical. Even in our realm, it's not just ensuring the backup was done, but tested.
Yes.
Right. That's really big. Yeah.
Yes.
Number 2 on our list was securing your infrastructure. So, did you want to?
That's a big one.
Do you want to tackle that one?
That's a big one.
Or maybe just one major part of it.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, actually, to your point with the vendor support too, is we still have to ask the question: is the backup software that I'm using ransomware aware? Is it even is there built-in defenses? Many modern or recent editions have added those feature sets, but sometimes we know IT doesn't necessarily get a lot of attention and may have systems in place from several years back without any updates. Well, you might be missing, in fact, probably the most important component of our IT defense system is a ransomware aware backup. So that's a major key. So securing your infrastructure, it kind of ties in together, making sure we're using modern backup practices, modern backup tools, right? And then just having a posture. I want to say, we're going to talk a lot about security probably over the next while, but just having an IT company that is definitely focused, but also with the decision maker team being aware that this is now something that needs to be at the table in a discussion. Do we have a posture towards security threat defense, right? So in particular, to pick on a nitty gritty, backup servers are still very common, and a lot of times for convenience and I would say ease, people tend to favor Windows backup appliances sometimes, right? Well, Windows operating systems, and even in the server market, is still the #1 most susceptible operating system, right? So the general consensus in the market in our industry is move everything that's a backup appliance or backup software or backup operating system onto a Linux, like a hardened Linux OS is one just general guideline for sure.
You know, something that can't get overwritten or something, and it doesn't actually get encrypted by the Windows
That's
exploit.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly that.
I guess in business today, 90% of the equipment out there is still Windows-based,
Yeah.
right, in the business environment. So that's really what we're trying to talk about here today and drawing awareness is that ransomware is written for that.
That's exactly.
Doesn't mean it can't happen on some other platform,
Yep.
right? But the majority of the ransomware that we see is definitely on Windows.
Yeah.
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 You know what? You touched on it early there, but number 3 is test, test, and test again. So what? You know, maybe I'll just elaborate a little bit on that because I know I touched on it as well. But it's not good enough to just say that you've got the backup, right? You've got to actually test the backup, but also start to you need to take a look at, does your backup have ransomware in it, right? So that's a big thing. But you want to test it. Make sure that you're following the 3-2-1 rules of backup. And then you want to make sure that you're doing those monthly restore tests. But like I said, a lot of people don't actually go and check the data, say like, do we have anything that is potentially exploited?
That's right.
Right, that's a big thing. So, all right, so number 4 is be proactive. Detection, early detection is key in any response. You know, there's a couple things on that. You've got if you catch it earlier, you have a better chance of recovering your data, and you may lose less if there's a loss situation involved. Right. And then there's also how there's some tools or like what exists today that you can get that early detection.
Right.
Right. So maybe I'll give a bit of an example. You know, major software that a lot of IT companies use. It's called SolarWinds.
Right.
And they had a hack that they released publicly where it was infected, I think 9 months prior to their detecting it. So what had happened was that their patch releases or anybody that patched would have passed that hack code, susceptible code down. And then it was pushing out to the clients because a lot of MSPs use the software.
The hacker's dream.
Yeah, so basically they infected one source and then they used that to get repeat offenses to their clients, which then repeated downstream. It was a pretty major ordeal, but the early detection was not caught in time. So I know that they've done a lot of reworking in their organization. They took 1.5 years off, but to secure their software, and they now have a security protocol in place where each build they build it in 3 different data centers, and they check the MD5 sum of their builds from all 3 independent sources to make sure that they all match.
It's nice.
And you know, like I said, they've learned from their mistake, but I'm sure that was costly. They haven't published, at least that I can find, how much that cost them. But what tools exist in our system right now that help provide us with early detection?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, and there's a couple ways to handle it. I want to say, you know, I look at security as coming in the front door and everything that you can do in between there. So the front door would be the end user's computer, the end users, right? So on an end user's computer, having a ransomware-aware antivirus or internet security program that's recent, that's modern, not just simply getting latest updates, but is also a new edition and is managed to ensure that it's continually getting its updates in an hourly or multiple times a day is kind of the frequency that we would expect today. So those might be the earliest warning. It might catch that, hopefully, and lock it down. But if it doesn't, the next step is there an application on the server? Same thing. Is there an antivirus on the server? Is that like ransomware aware? Is it receiving its updates? If not, you know, is it an operating system that may be of a different language, like we said previously, right? Windows versus Linux is a great example. When a code is actually written for Windows, it won't be able to simply jump from operating system to operating system unless it's programmed intelligently to do so. So with AI, I'm fearful that that's going to be easier. But finally, maybe the most important is in the backups within itself, being able to search the backups, like scan the backups, kind of like an antivirus scan, but specific to ransomware, and having that detection analytics built in, right? So modern and advanced backup software and solutions are going to have that ability to actually see the differences between files, you know, from yesterday's copy or a copy from an hour ago. Why is it different all of a sudden? And intelligently know this traces the patterns of what may be specific modules in ransomware, and identify that and lock that back up and or trigger alerts and a sequence of events. Yeah, so
I don't know how you could do it otherwise today with the proliferation of, you know, attacks coming in with trying to get your data, right?
it's being proactive, right? So
Yeah.
like this is just pieces of software. Like you just mentioned, those folks, they had to change their entire operation to be security centric. Right? And this is kind of, I guess, the biggest point is we're looking at having a security posture is kind of integral to every business now. If you want to continue to use the internet and technology, it's kind of a piece that you have to adopt and think about it as incorporating your daily decisions in some manner.
Yeah, well, let's sign off here with the fifth strategy or tactic here on being prepared to fight. It's fast recovery.
Right.
If you can't just go and recover in a meaningful time frame, it's this kind of like a business continuity exercise, because with all things in your business, if you lose your data, there's a lot of scare tactics out there, but they're real. Like businesses fail, a certain percentage of businesses fail after 2 years of losing their data entirely.
Yeah.
It's like, there's an argument to be said, okay, if everything fails, do we have a paper backup?
Right.
Just of our contracts?
Yeah.
Do we know who our customers are? But you can imagine how long would it take to actually go from that state to a functioning business again with all of your core systems and, emailing and reporting, invoicing, collecting money, being able to pay your bills.
Test.
Yeah. Number 3 strategy, test. It's super critical, but fast recovery, it's really important. So is there anything you wanted to close with,
Yeah,
Tom?
well, I mean, with the fast recovery, that's multi-level as well, right? So modern sophisticated backup software has the ability to restore not just a file or a folder, but the entire server in an operating state, even in a specific moment in time, which is very complex, right? And many days, like nowadays, all servers in some way are typically integrated to each other and rely on each other. So there's also a sequence that these servers have to be restored, especially if we're going to a moment in time. There's got to be the right kind of arrangement, right? And this goes back again to our point number 3, right? You got to test it, but also test not just a simple test, but sometimes it has to be a complicated test. And that is very costly time-wise and preparations, but I promise everybody that goes through that exercise will learn very, very valuable lessons that will save them much more time and considerably much more money. So.
Yeah, well, maybe more than people maybe care to admit even. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, you know what, so let's summarize. So being prepared to fight or being prepared to pay is protect yourself. Make sure you've got a good working backup. If you need vendor support, it's out there.
Yeah.
Secure your infrastructure. So there's a lot of Windows-based backups that you probably want to stay away from. Moving to a non-Windows or proprietary backup has a less chance of being infected by the actual backup or the ransomware itself. Test again. Point strategy number 3. Make sure you verify that your backups are not infected. And number 4 is being proactive with early detection. That's really critical. The sooner you find it, the better off that you are. And make sure that you've got a way to fast recover, whether it be a physical or a virtual recovery. Just make sure that it's quick as that's reasonably possible. And reasonable to some people might be a day or 2. It doesn't need to be instantaneous, but to some businesses it needs to be instantaneous. Like it has to match, I think, like the way that your client interaction is, the way that your business operates. So hopefully those are some good pointers. And
Sure.
Yeah, we'll see you again in the next video. So thanks very much, Tom.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.